A month ago, 69X Minutes started as a meme posted by Elon. Now, just weeks later, it's the most hard-hitting news show in the world, breaking the stories mainstream media twists, lies about, or won't even touch. In just 4 episodes, we've reported from over 20 countries, featured presidents, foreign ministers, members of Congress and Parliament, CEOs, generals, whistleblowers, and of course, citizen journalists, all exclusively on X. Our first 3 episodes have already reached over 50 million people worldwide. This is real journalism, raw, unfiltered, unbiased. It's the truth. To the fearless X-journalists, our incredible producers, editors, and of course, our great hosts, thank you for all your hard work to bring 69X Minutes to millions every week. To everyone watching, sharing, and standing with us, this is only the beginning. Stay locked in. We're working on many more shows just like this, only on X. Tonight's 69X Minutes starts now.
Welcome to 69X Minutes. The news, but without filters, no fluff and no boring talking heads, you know the ones. Just the biggest headlines, the boldest investigations, and the wildest stories straight from the X trenches. Real news, real fast, so let's get stuck in. Free speech is under attack, it feels permanently. AI is spiralling out of control. Global power struggles are escalating. Tonight, we expose it all. Dr. Larry Ahn warns America's institutions aren't educating, they are reprogramming a generation. Chris Ems is on the run, accused of aiding North Korea with crypto. He says he's innocent. The US, well, they don't agree. Lara Trump, former RNC co-chair and yes, daughter-in-law of President Trump, unleashes on the woke mobs. Senator Mike Lee slams Washington's spending spree, billions overseas while Americans struggle. Dr. Gregorio Amayugo warns AI could be deadlier than nukes and no one's doing a thing about it. Romania's election is a disaster. Carlin was blocked and arrested. Now George Simeon fights to stay in. Is democracy collapsing? MEP Marcus Bouquet is taking on Brussels, EU overreach and censorship, and he is not holding back. Iran's crown prince says the regime is weakening, but will change come from inside or out. And in my take, I break down the Democrats' latest meltdown, from backing terror sympathisers to trying to kill Elon Musk's electric car empire. You could not make this stuff up. The battle for power is on. AI, censorship, political crackdowns. Who wins? Who gets erased? No corporate script here, no spin, just the hard truth, only on 69X Minutes. He doesn't stay in one place for long. A different city, a new number, always watching, always moving. Chris Ems is a man on the run. The US wants him because of North Korea. Well, that's what they say. He gave a speech inside the Forbidden Country and now he is the FBI's most wanted man. He tells a different story. But in the game of geopolitics, the truth doesn't always matter. What do you think? Mario sat down with Chris to get his side of the story.
So I'm just shocked. I'm heartbroken what you're going through. I'm also heartbroken by the lack of attention and care your case is given. I think it's really, really unfair. And I tried to think, maybe, is there a reason? Is there something he did? They're like, hold on, no, this guy is actually guilty, not like the other guys. No, you're probably the least guilty out of all the stories out there in crypto. So let's begin from how you got into crypto.
I was 19, so I literally went to drama school. It was far too, I would say drama school was far too dramatic for me. Just didn't like it. So I ended up moving to London as a young kid and trying to, get a job. So I worked for Apple, then I worked for Google for a while. But I always wanted to get into this startup world. So I ended up moving to Berlin in Germany. So I got a job at startups, worked at different ones. Anyway, many years go by. In 2015, I got a job working for a company, a payments company, which was the first ever payments company to use, but that had a technology to produce crypto debit cards. So I left that company just the beginning of 2017, and I set up my own company, which was called Token Key at the time.
Token what?
Token Key was the name of the business, out of Gibraltar. At the same time as doing that, sort of, we had a number of clients. They did good with ICOs. We did okay.
All right. So here's a young, I won't call you a kid, young gentleman, building a startup, trying to do the right thing back in 2017, 2018 as well.
Yeah.
So take us to 2019.
Okay. So 2019, as you know, we had a big reset in the crypto market, and our business, there were no ICOs anymore. There was no point for our company to really exist at that point, because there was just nothing. You remember, it was a desert. It just went dry. Anyway, one day I'm on LinkedIn and I see a message from a guy. Just people were messaging me all the time, saying, "Hi, would you like to speak at a conference about crypto in North Korea?" And I think, okay, I've never heard that one before. And so I wasn't so silly. I was naive. I was young. But I wasn't so silly to think, I can just jump on a plane and go and do this. So what I did, I thought, you know what I'm going to do? Before I say yes to this, I'm going to write a letter to the British Embassy in Pyongyang. Back then, there was a British Embassy. And I'm British, just to be clear to everyone at home. This is why the story becomes bizarre. I'm British. I've never been a United States resident. I'm not a United States citizen. I don't have any family members that are. So I write to the British government. I say, I'm thinking of speaking to the embassy. I'm thinking of coming and speaking at this event. And essentially, I got a letter back, a very nice letter. And the letter said, look, we don't recommend you go to North Korea, but there's nothing illegal about you going and doing this as a British citizen. So again, check. I go, okay, cool. Look, this will be an adventure. The other thing that informed the decision is if people have a kind of a short memory. At the time in which we went to North Korea, Donald Trump who's now the president again, was planting trees with Kim Jong-un on the border of North Korea and talking about peace deals. They were holding peace summits and peace conferences.
We walked into North Korea.
Absolutely. And that was all going on in the context of when we were going. So again, it felt, I think for me and the other people that attended, it felt like we were going into this new frontier, not to do business per se, but to build relationships, as potentially this relationship between the United States and the DPRK North Korea was going to change. So that's kind of the homework I'd done in my head and my justification at the time for going, thinking that I'd be okay. But I was very, very wrong. So obviously it's North Korea, right? So you can't just walk into a conference and speak what you want to speak, right? So before that, we were given, by the North Korean organizers, we were given a bunch of incomprehensible sort of copy-paste Google sort of titles. I think one was titled Blockchain and Peace, which is the one I think Virgil Griffith spoke about.
The one that's in jail now.
That's in jail. There are a bunch of them. I can't even remember, Mario, what mine was called, because this conference, and I've said it in other interviews, it was so boring, even I fell asleep. Can you imagine speaking at a conference, you fall asleep?
As a speaker?
As a speaker. It was that boring. There were, so we had all these weird titles, right? But all of the information, we weren't allowed to get up there and start freestyling and saying, oh, da-da-da-da-da-da.
You have to follow.
You followed that. Oh, okay, it was incomprehensible. So when you were following it, of course, you spoke around it, but you were sticking into the defined subjects. You weren't sort of going out and speaking about something completely irrelevant or off topic from what that was. But beside the point, everything we spoke about was fully available online.
What you guys are teaching is just basics, is from what I understand.
Everything is basic. It's pure basic crypto. Google, what is a blockchain? Because that's all we were allowed to speak about.
So you gave that presentation innocently, and you got bored to death in the presentation. You
Absolutely.
left as well as, everything was chill once you left. You moved on, yeah?
Moved on. We flew back. I flew back to London. Other people flew back to different places they were from. Didn't think anything of it, really.
But can you tell me what happened afterwards? When was that shock?
Yeah, so Thanksgiving of 2019, November I'm not American, but whatever date Thanksgiving is. I'm at home in my apartment in Malta, and I got a phone call from a friend, and he was like, Chris, you need to get online now. And I open the phone, and I see American indicted for breaking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of the United States, Virgil Griffith, for attending a cryptocurrency conference in North Korea. And so I'm like, okay. So I go down, I start reading Co-Conspirator 1, Co-Conspirator 2. And I can tell by the way in which they've worded it that one of those co-conspirators is me, but I can't tell which one. And I tell you, Mary, that was the day I always say that I went from being a boy to becoming a man within a second. Because from that day on, I knew that my life had changed forever. I was no longer happy-go-lucky Chris, getting involved in different businesses and having a good time. I was now being actively pursued by the US government.
My name is James Lee, and today we're exposing a hidden danger in baby formula. A new study from the University of Kansas reveals that most infant formulas in the United States are packed full of added sugars, sometimes up to 60 grams per day, which is the equivalent of drinking 2 cans of Coca-Cola. Take, for example, Similac, a popular formula brand manufactured by Abbott Nutrition, who, by the way, controls 50% of the baby formula market. The first ingredient on the label? Corn syrup. But if you look closely at the label, there's zero reference as to how much sugar is actually in the formulation. Doctors are warning that added sugars increase the risk of rapid weight gain, obesity, diabetes, while also interfering with healthy gut development. Once again, the worst part is that the formula labels don't clearly show the added sugars, leaving parents in the dark. Something also worth noting is that last year, Abbott Nutrition launched a new weight loss shake that, quote, supports adults on their weight loss journey. Coincidence? I'll let you be the judge. My name is James Lee, and that is your 69 seconds.
Billions of dollars have been sent to fight a war, regarded by many as a bigger battle for freedom and democracy. But where has all the money gone? Some say it's been swallowed by the military-industrial complex. Others claim even more has simply vanished. One senator, Mike Lee of Utah, says enough is enough. Tonight, Eric Bolling sits down with Senator Lee. His vision, his warning, and why he believes lives can be saved if we just stop funding the war in Ukraine.
And now let's bring in Senator Mike Lee, the great senator from Utah, Republican, also a friend of mine. I would like to point that out. Senator, really good to have you on this very important week. President Trump has sent Steve Witkoff over to Moscow to meet with Putin, and all indications are that things are looking good. Before I get you to weigh in, let's take a listen to what Putin had said post-meeting with Steve Witkoff, representative of Donald Trump and the American people. Listen.
We agree with the propositions to stop hostilities, but we proceed from the fact that such ceasefire should be such that would lead to a permanent peace.
And obviously, Senator, as we know, it takes a long time to figure out if these things hold, if they'll last, and whatnot. But can you give us a sense if you think this one is for real, if Trump has really negotiated a ceasefire in a 3-year-old war?
First of all, this is the most positive, favorable step we've seen in this conflict, basically ever. You know, after President Trump and Vice President Vance sent Mr. Zelensky packing from the White House to fix his attitude, it seems that he's ready to come back to work for a negotiated peace, and that's a really good thing. So in response, the United States has resumed military aid and intelligence sharing after Ukraine agreed to Trump's proposed 30-day ceasefire under strict oversight. Now, I'm on the record. I want to cut off all aid to Ukraine and stop the war. But this carrot and stick approach with Zelensky seems to be leading to peace talks, and that's a very good development. Trump's, of course, threatened sanctions and tariffs on Russia to push for a ceasefire. And meanwhile, a critical minerals deal with Ukraine is back on the table. Our envoy, Steve Witkoff, is expected to travel to Moscow to help negotiate with Russian leadership. And Putin has said that he's in favor of a ceasefire, although he's hinted that he wants concessions and terms that lead to a longer peace. We'll see pretty soon, I think, what can be done to make him play ball and what can't be done. But obviously, the success of this 30-day ceasefire in and of itself is a great thing, and it hinges ultimately on Russia's acceptance and its compliance with the terms, along with potential extensions or escalations, depending on Moscow's response and, of course, developments on the battlefield.
So, Senator, what do you think? What do you think this minerals deal, the rare earth and minerals deal, will entail? You know, I'm still trying to figure that out, piece it out. It looks like to me it was some sort of payback over the next 10, 20, 100 years, have no idea how long. And is it worth it? I mean, I guess we can stop spending money in Ukraine, it's worth it. But you and I have been on the same page. We should have stopped spending money in Ukraine $180 billion ago or so, right?
Exactly, 100%. But I also agree that this war does need to stop. if this minerals deal, the details of which we know very little about, if this can get us to a point of peace, it'll be a great thing. And I would add here, Eric, this is the kind of thing that should have been happening from the beginning. From the very beginning of the war, certainly from the very beginning of U.S. assistance, well, we should have been moving forward. President Biden should have been pushing an agenda of peace. Hats off to Trump for doing that.
What do you think, Senator? What do you think? Should Zelensky be removed? You know, clearly, legally and honestly and democratically. What are your thoughts about getting rid? Should the Ukrainian people remove Zelensky? Has he done them any favors at all as president?
Well, look, I normally don't comment on another country's internal elected politics. It's not really our place as Americans to tell them who to elect and who not to elect. But I will say I was dumbfounded, absolutely dumbfounded by a number of things that Mr. Zelensky has done. In particular, most recently, that meeting in the Oval Office with President Trump and Vice President Vance. It was as though he could not have managed that any worse. I would imagine that is not going over all that well within Ukraine, among the voting population there. But like I say, as an outsider, I don't know that I know enough about the internal politics to know how that'll play.
I wonder, know this, and we may never know this, but I wonder if it's part of the negotiation with Putin, is that some sort of promise or a wink, wink, and a nod that we would never allow Ukraine into NATO. What are your thoughts on that?
Ukraine doesn't have almost any of the hallmark characteristics. It lacks many of the prerequisites that someone ought to have in order to be able to get into NATO in the first place. That's why among those who have been suggesting, particularly during this war, that we should add Ukraine to NATO or just deem it to be part of NATO, treat it as if it were already a part of NATO, is crazy. This is a nation at war. This is a nation that has not had a significant amount of political stability or national security stability over the years. And so adding it, particularly at a time when it's actively at war with Russia, it's like trying to ensure a house that's already on fire. You don't do that.
Yeah. Very quickly, about a minute or so, Trump says $300 billion the American people have sent to Ukraine. Congress says $180 billion. Doesn't matter what the number is. Zelensky says he only knows about $75 billion of it. What are your thoughts on that before we go?
There are a lot of tricky accounting tools that are used in Washington, sometimes deliberately to deceive the public. Other times they're just tricky because the nature of the U.S. government is tricky. It's complex and it's enormous. I suspect that they're all talking about slightly different numbers. Not all of the aid that's been sent by the United States to Ukraine has come there directly. Much of it has gone indirectly. Perhaps Mr. Zelensky is just using a different accounting method than we are. The fact is, it has cost Americans hundreds of billions of dollars. This is not our war. It was not our war. At the very beginning, I thought it might be worth sending an aid package at the very beginning in there to try to deter Russia. But as this war has progressed and as the aid packages have continued and gotten larger and larger, I've become increasingly critical of them. In part because at no time did we ever identify reasons why this is our war. At no time were we identifying how it was we were going to bring about peace. President Trump is bringing an end to that unfortunate era and hopefully bringing peace to that region.
All right, we're going to leave right there. Senator Mike Lee, great state of Utah, Republican, friend of mine, for bowling and also for 69 minutes. Appreciate your time, Senator. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Elon Musk did things right. Shocker, I know, right? When he bought X, or Twitter at the time, he got rid of the third-party fact checkers and whoever at Twitter headquarters was making the fact checks and striking people's accounts because he knew it was BS. Now that Trump got reelected and everyone sees where politics is going in this country, Mark Zuckerberg is pretending to be doing the same thing, but he's not. Years ago, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, I had tweeted out that she could have casually retired at 80 and Barack Obama could have replaced her with an ultra-liberal. That was fact-checked by USA Today in like 1,000-word piece with some sort of law professor weighing in that it could have been replaced. She could have been replaced with a conservative. Yeah, so everyone who screenshot my tweet about that and posted it on Meta and Facebook still has a strike on their account for fact-checking and posting false information. That is across the board what has happened there. Things need to change. Zuckerberg isn't changing them. He's just putting on a show to hopefully win back support from conservatives. That's not real. Real action is cleaning the slate of all those accounts. This is Tim Young. That's my 69 seconds for 69 minutes.
AI is advancing faster than any weapon in history, but we have zero global regulations. Gregorio Amayugo, a leading AI expert at France's Atomic Energy Commission, warns AI could be more dangerous than nukes. We regulate nuclear weapons, radiation, bioweapons, so why not AI? If we wait too long, AI won't just surpass human intelligence, it could start to make its own rules. And by then, it might be too late.
I think this is a problem for scientists everywhere, AI scientists. It's that the fact that in order to make these things work today, we need so much computing power and so much access to data. That's not something that comes easy to scientists. It's something that comes very easily to tech companies. It's still turbulent times for science. I was talking to a scientist from one of these big tech companies, and he said, we believe in self-driving cars, just as in technology in general. The time has come for humanity to take the back seat. And I thought, what a horrible thing to say. That is absolutely not what we're trying to do. And we're trying to focus actually on deploying technology that includes AI, that is aimed at helping people, not replacing them. And now the big hope and the big question is this going to be like ChatGPT? Once we've gathered enough data, made big enough multimodal models, we're going to have reliable multitask behavior from a robot? My personal opinion is no. So no, for me, Gen AI is still statistic, making things that sound good. Applied to robotics, as it is today, is making movements that look good relative to what you've just told them. And that's the stage we're at. No one's going to be able to gather enough data to make models that are good enough in the real world. Just use NVIDIA cards and simulate it, and you can get all the simulated data you want, and it's and you'll train your robots and you'll get them to a point where they are reliable enough. I would say right now, if you compare Gen AI powered robotics to ChatGPT, we are in 2018. I had a big argument, and he said, yeah, but that's critical in a factory. It's not critical in your home if it makes a mistake. I said, really? So I said, please pass the pitcher of water, and he passes the bleach. How much tolerance for failure do you have? And so in manufacturing, you have no tolerance for failure. You have a really structured environment. So do you really need Gen AI? But it seems that everyone's trying to get their humanoid robots to work in the factory. What we're trying to do in my team is use Gen AI for the human interaction, so to try and get high-level instructions that the robot's going to execute, and then call, much in the same way you would with RAG, you call deterministic functions that are going to create trajectories, and call perception functions that are going to be more deterministic. It's autonomous, but it's safer. I know Elon Musk is going for full stack AI, and that means deploying AI at every stage, and that is much more powerful in terms of using data to scale up, but it's not safe. And I am horrified at what I'm seeing right now with the NHTS getting the self-driving, the FSD certified as level 4. That's going to happen now. And we are at some 40-something deaths and counting.
Is it too late to put guardrails around it?
Gosh. No, it's not too late. Or at least I thought it was not too late up until very recently. I'd say that the last few years, actually, the way of thinking in Europe and the US was not so different. We were aligned in terms of what should we allow in terms of safety. And I have the distinct feeling, it's not a feeling. For me, Ted Cruz said it very clearly, we're not aligned anymore. How much should we open, to which degree, what things should we ask for if we're going to allow these things? So are there components that are missing? Are there things that we should demand if people are going to deploy AI-powered robots? The scary thing is that many of the things that are necessary, they don't exist yet.
By the time you build it, is it going to be too late?
I keep asking myself that. So I'd say that The good thing with all this is that although things are moving fast very quickly, we are by no means at a stage of superhuman intelligence or at a stage where we could be scared of robots coming chasing after us. That's not the case now, and it's not going to be the case for quite some time.
Can there be an international body to make policies to regulate in some way, shape, or form?
That is a wonderful question. Right now, Europe's still thinking we're going to do it our own way. There is a growing voice saying that this is something that where there should be an international consensus. I mean, it's easy to laugh us off because we're saying, no, we need safety, but we're not really the ones driving the thing. So
Why is there not a robots are going to take over the world commission?
the AI and Robotics Agency, that could be that could make a lot of sense. I've been working with the OECD for the past few years as an expert there, but it's not their role. So they bring together states. I think that's something that could emerge from the Global Party on AI, for example. Right. But I actually hadn't thought that such a thing was possible. So
I think it should be like a nuclear energy policy.
It should, but we are actually pushing for that at least at European level. Right now, this is what we're asking for, in much the same way as it happened for the aviation industry. So aircraft operate in an uncertain environment. Robots now are going to operate in uncertain environments and bring uncertainties of their own. But there is a structure in place that has allowed that to get better and safer over time. So I think something like that is needed. For the next year, I think we're going to see huge advances on what we call dexterity in robotics. So what that means is manipulation, it's the hand. And the hand is a robot in itself.
Dr. Larry Ahn, the president of Hillsdale College, isn't holding back. He's warning that woke ideology is infecting universities, government, and even the military, and that America's founding values are on the line. Education, once the foundation of free thought, is now a battleground. The left's control over academia isn't just about teaching, it's about reprogramming an entire generation. So can America fight back? Well, Dr. Ahn has a plan. Check it out.
I'm joined now by Dr. Arn, president of Hillsdale College. It is such a pleasure to have a conversation with you today about something that's so very important to so many people, and that's, of course, education. And so I'm really excited to kind of talk about how we ended up here in a place where in the media right now, the abolition of the Department of Education seems to be the thing everybody's talking about. And it's because education is not really doing what it was supposed to do anymore.
Every public education entity in America, every school, every district, every state is extensively a compliance organization with the rules that are made at the central level. And the rules, by the way, are indecipherable. Hillsdale College doesn't take any of this money and is free of it. Out of curiosity, I asked a lawyer one time, why don't you send me Title IV of the Higher Education Act? It's about 500 pages. Changes a lot. You have to employ 6 people to comply with it in your organization. And the lawyer replied to me, well, you won't be able to read it. And I was a little offended. You know, I said, what are you, a lawyer? I'm a pretty smart guy. He said, no, I can't read it either, he said. We keep an expert here. And she's the only one I've ever met who can more or less say what it means. And so it has tended to make the education system a top-down, bureaucracy-ridden system. There are more employees in public education today who are not teachers than the teachers. And that means it's sort of like a Soviet system in a way. In the Soviet Union, you know, what a Soviet is a collection, a cell of the party. Well, in every factory and in it's kind of like that in China today, in every school, in every military unit, there's a party officer or two to be watching over, right? And that means that we don't delegate the doing of this thing down to the teacher, which we should. And the reason is, of all of the things in the world that can be centralized, education is last. But education happens in the soul of the student. And if it doesn't happen there, it doesn't happen. You can't do it except that they are working hard and attending. And so control of the system should be as near the student as possible. And that means teachers and parents in the school. That's the natural sovereign unit. It's not difficult to understand at all. It's just very hard to do. Education doesn't get to be rocket science until it gets to rocket science. And then you have to have a rocket scientist teach it. Bureaucrats can't teach that any more than teach anything else. And, there's a school reform movement raging in America. It's the most promising thing in public administration. Hillsdale College has helped to found 100 charter schools. We don't take any money from the government, so they never pay us a nickel. We have a curriculum. We work with them. In those charter schools, the ratio between teachers and non-teachers, including janitors and everybody, is something like 1:6 to 1:8 in favor of the teachers. And there's a majority who are not teachers in public education. And that's the shameful thing, see? And it gets in the way. We have a crisis in America teaching reading. It's a national goal that they should learn to read by the end of the 3rd grade. In our schools, except for rare, severely impaired students, which we can almost always help, we never graduate a kindergartner who can't read. And the reason is they've already taught themselves to talk. Every human being does. And talking and reading are the same phenomenon. And so the way you teach reading, and this has been known for age old, is called phonics. Phonos is the Greek word for sound. Start with the sounds. They already know them. Teach them to sound out the letters that are on the page. And 3 months later, they read because they can already read. And they learn to read. Now, why can't we teach? There's been a lot of shocking stuff come out lately about the literacy rates in America, which are low. And that's just shameful, right? Because the talking rates in America are high. We don't often talk very well. And it's partly because we haven't learned to read. And the thing is, everybody can read. Of course they can read. If you get a dyslexic kid in school, almost always, and not always. And of course, the severe cases are severe and they have to be dealt with. And it's a great source of pride to be able to deal with them when one can. But in normal, what's called dyslexic, if you just give up 30 minutes of recess and do extra phonics, almost always they catch up. Because it's like, whoever taught a dog to wag its tail, it's what they can do. Why is it hard to teach a kid to read? You'll see that most of the bureaucrats are at the district and school level. And a lot of them are partially funded by federal grants. And so there needs to be major changes all up and down the system. And if we get those, we'll learn to read again. And then once you can read and compute, all the knowledge in the universe is available to you. And if you don't learn those things, it is not. And remember, no one has a larger interest in your education than you. And you have a natural motive to get it, being human. Mostly that'll work out. And it won't uniformly work out.
This is Bree Dale, investigative journalist for The Daily Wire. Elon Musk's social media platform, X, has revealed that Irish police used a secret court to target independent media outlet Gript Media, according to court documents I obtained for this report. The police order, issued under the Criminal Justice Act, demanded private messages, IP addresses, and media posts related to Gript's coverage of protests against the Irish government's efforts to force towns to house migrants in 2024. X refused to comply, emphasizing their commitment in an email to, quote, defend and respect user voices. Journalist Fatima Gunning, who was on the ground reporting during the protests, expressed concern that the use of secret court orders against journalists could be perceived as, quote, gross abuse of power and Irish law, unquote, potentially undermining the ability to report on issues vital to the Irish public. Irish police declined specific comment, but asserted their actions were lawful and necessary. This case, however, only highlights growing concerns of threats to press freedom and confidentiality throughout the EU. This is Bree Dale, and that is your 69 seconds for 69 minutes.
Marcus Bouquet isn't your typical MEP. The AFD politician is taking on Brussels bureaucracy, EU overreach, and the censorship machine. And he's not afraid to ruffle feathers along the way. From free speech battles to exposing globalist power plays, Marcus is here to reveal all.
Elon speaking out in favor of our party. It was important for us to see that the common narrative certain mainstream media try to put, which is that the AFD stands isolated, nobody is supporting our cause, etc., that this narrative was not correct. He was somebody who spread our word, who made it very clear to the people in the US to say, look, these guys at the AFD, whatever you might hear about them from the mainstream media, they are not as crazy as they are depicted. They have a point on various political matters, as for example, migration politics, as for example, when it comes to economy and stuff. Those people who claim to be defending democracy actually don't defend democracy. These are words, this is a vocabulary of liars. The guys who speak out in favor of peace, they don't want real peace in Ukraine, for example. Those guys who want to say, we want to defend democracy, we want to make people's voices heard. Yes, they want to make people's voices heard, but only their own voices, only their left-wing voices. They don't have respect and they don't want everybody to be heard, and they especially don't want any political change. So as soon as you get to the point where you have a political change, in that very moment, the political establishment strikes back. And you have to see one important thing, and that is these guys know that their time is over. They have all their people there in jobs. You know, these guys are completely unable to take any kind of normal job in the free economy, for example. They are stuck within the political system. So they cannot allow themselves to lose power. And as they are fighting for survival, they will take whatever it costs to stay in power and whatever it costs to fight us. And that might be turning back elections, for example. They don't see any conflict with democracy. They don't even doubt that their views are wrong. That is very important to consider right now. They are in a fight for their own survival, and we are in a fight for making these countries great again, because you have corruption in the system. You have a political elite that tries to stay in power at whatever cost, and they don't really care about what's going on to the people. So this is not their problem. Their problem is, how do we stay in power, and they will take whatever it means. We have around 20% of people voting for, or who have voted for the AFD, a little bit more. But I think we need to have more percents. And as soon as we have a higher percentage, you will see real political pressure going onto the CDU. The problem right now for the CDU is they can't take a stronger step towards controlling migration, controlling the borders, closing down the borders and stuff, as long as they are together with the SPD, with the socialists. They are a socialist party. They are left-wing guys. They don't want closed borders. They don't want a change towards conservative, pragmatic politics. Right now, we have politics of continuation as long as they can. And I think Friedrich Merz did not only do a great mistake towards the German people, he also did a great mistake towards his own party, because you still have a lot of conservative people inside the CDU. He will sooner or later maybe also destroy his own party if he continues going that way, because you already have a lot of voices inside the CDU that said, yes, we want to have a more pragmatic politics, and that is only possible with the AFD. During the last 30 years, you had the establishment of various oligopoles or monopoles in our societies. One was a political oligopole, if you want. That means that the political system was divided between conservatives, socialists, Greens, and maybe some liberals. And they basically divided the country. Everything is split between those four parties. Now you had a similar structure inside our media system. And that means that the Socialist Party is controlling a lot of our print media, governing the common narrative inside the society. They had a monopoly on the opinion. And now you have suddenly alternative media, social media coming up, put this common narrative, this monopoly into question. And surely this is something they want to go against. And the DSA is just one tool to go against these differing opinions. And it's just one tool in order to make certain voices unheard, to mute certain voices and certain criticisms about the current governmental course. And so I see the DSA as a big threat for our democracy. I see the DSA, among other tools, as one big threat to our freedom of speech. And yes, it is something we have to abolish, because if we want true democracy, we have to allow true freedom of speech. good thing about our party, about the AfD, is that we don't permanently have to change our party program like other parties have to do. So that means we still stick to the same aims, goals, and ideas that we have had during the last 10 years. That means we want a safer country, we want a stable economy, which is based on a free economy, free enterprises. We want to stick to our course of pragmatism. We don't see the need for changing any of our party ideals or to change even our party program as a whole. There's just no need for that. It has proven to be very pragmatic, very realistic. We already saw the problems coming up that we are faced with right now. Years ago, a decade ago, actually, we already saw about what was going to happen inside Germany, what was going to happen to our social structure and interior safety of our people too. Nobody actually believes that this government is going to last. By being realistic, by being trustworthy, by staying pragmatic, as we do right now, we have really good chances of ending up first next time. So people are tired of this one-sided road, if you want. They want diversity, they want freedom of speech, they want differing opinions as well. What we see is that social media is permanently on the rise right now, and traditional media is declining. And I think this is a trend that will keep up during the next years as well. If you want true democracy, you need true freedom of speech. And this true freedom of speech is something we cannot get with the established media right now, which we need to do, which we need to fight together with the social media and alternative media, obviously.
Hello, I'm Adele, and here's a weekly crypto update on 69X. Bitcoin has been on a roller coaster, trading around 83K after hitting a 4-month low below 78K earlier this week. Analysts warn of potential further declines amid ongoing market volatility. The UAE is making bold moves in the crypto space. Abu Dhabi's MGX investment firm has taken a $2 billion stake in Binance, signaling the UAE's ambition to become a crypto hub. They've also introduced AE Coin, a stablecoin backed by the UAE dirham. In the U.S., the Senate Banking Committee passed the Genius Act, establishing a regulatory framework for stablecoins. This bipartisan effort aims to legitimize and foster growth in the crypto sector. Meanwhile, Russia is reportedly using cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ether, and Tether in oil trades with China and India to bypass Western sanctions. This marks a significant shift in global trade practices. On the regulatory front, the US SEC is reconsidering a proposal that would have required some crypto firms to register as crypto trading systems, indicating a potential shift toward more lenient oversight. And that's all for this week on 69X. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
She was the secret weapon in Donald Trump's highly successful election campaign. As RNC co-chair, Lara Trump was a force to be reckoned with. Since stepping down, she hasn't stopped, instead launching a new show on Fox. Yes, we sometimes let those legacy media dinosaurs on here as well. Touted by some as a future US president, myself included, she's only just getting started, and it gives me great joy to introduce her now. Lara, it's so lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you, Erin. Always great to be with you.
You spent so much of the past year campaigning for your father-in-law. You were co-chair of the RNC. You travelled the country. You put your reputation on the line to vouch for him. He is now delivering tenfold. How does that feel when you look at that?
The speed with which this administration has operated is the reason that you look at the Democrats in America and they don't even know what hit them. They don't even know what to do. Donald Trump and the Trump administration are on full offense all the time. They are getting things done, and they really aren't even playing with, the Democrats who used to, kind of take up some of the time and put headwinds against them. That isn't happening this time at all. It's amazing to see. And I think it's actually, whenever you kind of look big picture at the last 4 years here in America, and you realize how bad things had gotten with Joe Biden. So to now have someone in the White House who's delivering on the promises that he made at warp speed, that gives a lot of Americans great optimism about the future. So thank God Donald Trump is in the White House. For me, as a part of the family, as someone who's seen him go through the lowest lows, to see him right now, I'll tell you, it's been absolutely incredible.
You do see a side of him that 99.99% of the world don't, and that is him as a grandpa. I know he adores your kids and all his grandkids. I can't imagine how he has time for anything else other than running the country, but I also know through you directly that he's an incredible family man and it matters to him more than anything.
It's the number one reason I believe he decided to run for president. He wanted this country to be set up properly so that his grandchildren could get to grow up in the same country he got to grow up in, and that every American child has the opportunities that, you know, we've always had here in this country. And he's really hit his stride.
Hey, you mentioned the Democrats earlier. They have resorted to the lowest of lows. I mean, not standing for a child with brain cancer, suddenly determining that a terrorist supporter is going to be their poster child. I mean, I could go on and on. Is this so much desperation, or have they completely lost their way?
There's a rock bottom, and I feel like the Democrats are there right now. Look, they have no leader. They have no message. This weekend, I think they're all gathered together to kind of try to figure out their direction and what their talking points are going to be and how they woo the American people back on their side. Turns out the American people like common sense. Turns out the American people like when someone actually delivers on what they said they were going to do. It makes their life easier, not harder. I mean, it is absolutely insulting to every American that those people are representatives of so many around our entire country. And I'm just going to say, as former RNC co-chair, good luck to the Democrats, because, man, they need a lot of it.
I mean, you say rock bottom, but I feel like they could still go lower. I reckon
Maybe
only they could pull that off. Finally, Lara, I want to ask you about Elon Musk. We're on X here. This is his platform. They are trying to essentially destroy the bloke because he's trying to save the American taxpayer a fair chunk of change.
Elon Musk has given up so much, as has Donald Trump, to do the jobs that they are doing right now for the American people. This is a man who didn't need to do any of this, but we are so lucky to have him in there. The truth is, America could not continue in perpetuity with the kind of wasteful spending, the fraud and the abuse that actually bloated our federal government to this behemoth that it became. And the American taxpayers had no idea. It's amazing to see how these people who go out of their way to attack Elon for what? Transparency and accountability. It's because these people cannot stand, when the light hits them, they're going to melt. These are all the people, the swamp creatures that Donald Trump has been talking about for a long time. So I'm so grateful for Elon Musk. It is terrible what they're doing, but a lot of people in America have actually been going out of their way to buy Teslas and buy from him to try and show support. So I hope we see more of that.
Final word, I know that there was a lot of talk about a potential position for you in public service in terms of following the footsteps of your father-in-law. Moving forward, what kind of fire burns within you to do something yourself one day?
Yeah, you know, it's so funny because none of us in our family, Aaron, would have ever truly considered anything in politics, I think, before my father-in-law ran for president in 2016. And we've certainly seen the lows, but we've also seen the highs. Honestly, there's a beautiful side to politics as well as the awful side to politics. And the beautiful stuff is that you get to help people in this country and make people's lives better and inspire. And I've seriously considered twice you know, running for Senate at one point, and then, you know, trying to fill the seat for Marco Rubio here in Florida. It was the wrong time for me because I have a young family, but I would never say never. You know, I honestly follow where God places me. I try to listen and hear what he tells me, and it's led me into some pretty incredible places so far. So if that's something that he has in my future, I'm totally open to it. But for right now, I'm going to have fun on My View on Fox for a little while, and that's good enough for me.
Give the time slot a plug. Not that you need it. I saw the ratings. Oh, my Lord.
9 p.m. on Fox News every Saturday night.
When you say make Europe great again, what does a great Europe look like?
Depends from which party are you coming from. Let's say the liberals and the left-wing parties is a party that they protect the rights for woke agenda, for they want to eliminate or to destroy the nations like that. In the other hand, conservative patriotic parties, or I'm not afraid to use as well nationalist parties, they are protecting their nations, they are protecting their people, they are protecting their families, which is the main point that it will create the Europe again, because we must protect our culture, our religion, and whatever that includes.
How does, and I'm always much like impressed, and I don't mean that in a good way, that DEI, woke initiatives, you know, the gender issues and all that, how it could be international. Like, it's not just the United States. Same issues in South America, Latin America, same issues in Europe. What do you think is really behind the push for DEI and the immigration and all of these very similar problems that are facing almost all of the world? And the same people are seemingly behind it. What do you think the motivation is behind that?
It's something that we must take a look about it, and the role that many NGOs they have behind of those kind of ideologies. And is the reason that the previous day I sent as well one letter from European Parliament to the Department of Efficiency in USA about the funds that they give to some NGOs and some individual person to change the political mind of Cypriot people about an plan. I mean, one plan that they give us to find the so-called solution for Cyprus, that the most people in Cyprus, they don't agree about it, because at the end of the day, they recognize the occupation of Cyprus, the illegal occupation. But that you ask me, we must to see what those NGOs they are doing. And we must to clear the place for all of that, to see, to protect the role of the families against the woke agenda. And the message that we took from USA, the message that we took from the people of USA is, and the democratic message, is that the people, they want to secure the national identity and the family identity, that one family, they must have one father, which is the man, and one mother, which is the woman. All the others, the people, they say they don't agree. So we must respect the democracy, we must respect the vote of the people, and we must secure those things for the people that they vote on.
Yeah, I think one of the things, the consistent themes has been the belief that these policies, the woke ideology, the DEI, all of these things, are designed to disrupt the family, to cause, and with immigration, to cause a lack of unity. And it looks like the end result of that seemingly has something to do with maintaining power. You're building a coalition where you're looking to seize that power and stop their efforts to divide your countries and divide Europe. Do you see it that way, as if this is really more about them maintaining power and dividing their opposition versus any of the things?
I'm thinking that is the way to destroy our culture, our nation, so it will be easier for them to manipulate the people. This is what I'm thinking behind of those politics and of those ideology. They don't want to have strong people which is believed to their nation, to their flag, to their families.
Romania's presidential race is spiralling into chaos. First, Călin Georgescu was blocked from running. Then he was arrested. Now, George Simion is stepping in, securing 200,000 plus signatures in just days. But with courts deciding ultimately who's allowed to run, will they shut him down too? Is democracy in this NATO country collapsing? Or is there still a chance to save it? We sit down with Romania's newest presidential candidate to discover the truth behind the crisis.
Romanians protest against the destruction of democracy. The country's left liberal ruling coalition invalidated the first round of the presidential election, which, contrary to pre-election polls, was won by the right-wing politician Călin Georgescu.
We are witnessing a coordinated attack on democracy, where only the candidates approved by the establishment are allowed to run for office. The system eliminated Călin Georgescu not because of any legal issues, but because they feared him.
All this with the silent support of Brussels bureaucrats from the European Commission and the European Parliament. The decision sparked violent protests. Deprived of the right to run in the election, Călin Georgescu supported another right-wing candidate, George Simeon, who is committed to transatlantic cooperation as symbolized by his participation in the recent conservative CPAC conference.
We are not against EU. We Romanians want to be a part of EU, but not a part of the EU crooked bureaucratic Brussels.
The official reason for invalidating the first round of the presidential elections was alleged Russian interference in the election campaign. But it quickly turned out that in reality, the campaign was manipulated by the socialists and liberals ruling Romania.
We will not be silent. We will not allow Romania to be turned into a puppet state where our elections are a mere formality.
The political party that financed this was a left liberal party, right? They call themselves center-right, but in reality, they are actually left-wing. It is part of the EPP, European People's Party. They govern together with the socialists in Romania. They paid for the campaign of candidate Georgescu. They didn't know that it could explode in their face. They thought that Georgescu would get 5, maybe 10% of the votes, and that would be enough to achieve their goals. When it turned out that Georgescu had unexpectedly won the first round of the elections, desperate socialists and liberals canceled the vote.
People are as pissed off as they have never been before. They feel that we are not a democracy anymore. They feel that it's a dictatorship, just like it was during communism times. So now people feel the need to vote for the right solution just to eliminate all the socialists and the liberals from this course for the presidential elections. So even people who would normally, let's say, not vote for us now will vote for us because they feel that the democracy is at risk in Romania.
When we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. The crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you.
They might try to cancel him, but they have absolutely no legal grounds to cancel George Simeon. So we have many institutions working together now to stop the conservatives, actually, to stop the sovereignists, because this is the real fight we are fighting. It's the Democrats, like in the United States, which are the globalists in Romania, versus the sovereignists, the conservatives, the opposition mainly, because we are in the opposition. So the opposition must be stopped with all costs.
The problem is very serious. The ruling socialists and liberals in the European Union suggest that the next European country in which, like in Romania, they can interfere in elections is Poland. This is preparation. This is not consideration. This is preparation to contest the elections in Romanian style. And there can be various excuses. In Poland, the electoral battle for presidency will also be decided in May between the representative of the socialists and liberals, Rafał Trzaskowski, and the right-wing candidate, Karol Nawrocki. Brussels bureaucrats are already making it clear that they want to control the course of the presidential elections in Poland. Meanwhile, the ruling Polish coalition of socialists and liberals has announced that if the right-wing candidate wins, it will not recognize the results of the vote. During the election campaign, politicians from Prime Minister Donald Tusk's team want to censor the internet and block the X platform. At the same time, they are fiercely attacking media independent of the government, such as Telewizja Republika, the largest news television in Poland, which strongly opposes censorship. You defend American internet platforms, and you are not bothered by the fact that their algorithm will be part of American technological aggression against Europe. The words of Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz should be taken seriously. He is an influential politician from the ruling camp who personally led the illegal takeover of Polish public media after Donald Tusk's camp gained power in 2023. As a result, several hundred journalists were fired and censorship was introduced in public radio and television. This, among other things, was why the actions of Tusk's team in Poland were criticized by the authors of the Hudson Institute report. Revenge politics must end. Poland, like Romania, is now an arena of political battle.
Today, we are fighting for Romania. But tomorrow, this fight will be yours as well. We will make Europe great again.
European left liberal elites, against the will of voters, are trying by all means to deprive right-wing politicians of the chance to take power, even at the cost of destroying democracy.
Iran's crown prince is speaking out. Prince Reza Pahlavi is leading the opposition against the regime, calling for an Iran free from dictatorship. His plan? Unite opposition forces, cut off the regime's funding, and bring real change to Iran. But the question remains, can the Islamic Republic be toppled from the outside, or will real change have to come from within? Stay tuned for the full interview.
Iran pre-revolution in 1979 and the post-revolution Iran is like a completely different country. So can you maybe tell the audience what it stood for prior to 1979 when your father and your grandfather were the rulers for over 5 decades?
Pre-revolution, Iran was on track for prosperity, for progress. We have the steady growing economy. People's livelihood was becoming better and better every day as education was becoming more and more a factor, that Iranians were able to study abroad, come back to their country and start contributing to the betterment of our country.
Iran was an incredible country. Things were very positive back then. From an economical and social perspective, completely different. So give us an idea of how it was.
We never had to face the kind of discrimination that this regime has created against different ethnicities or religious communities. Iran was a country where people of different faiths were living together in peace and in harmony. We didn't have issues between Muslims, whether they were Sunnis or Shiites or Christians or Baha'is or Zoroastrians or Jews or what have you. This was as a result of this regime that all of a sudden came in, imposed a singular religious ideology to the detriment of everyone else, and that started the whole process of discrimination.
How could a society take such a stark difference from being secular in many ways, aligned with the West, to being in probably one of the top 5 enemies of the West, and a lot more authoritarian and obviously not secular anymore?
The way the regime took hold had its initial grounding into religious doctrine, in the sense that the revolutionary fervor was pretty much agitated and led by Khomeini, who brought in a concept that was in fact quite contrary to the tenets of Shiite religion. He pretty much stepped in claiming to be the sole representative of God on earth, and that everything was almost like nationalizing the church. And at the time, there were multiple numbers of higher clerics at the rank of Ayatollah, which is the highest that you can achieve. Khomeini, in fact, was a junior member of that cadre. All of a sudden, he propelled himself in a position, telling them, you no longer will have access to revenue to finance your own disciples. I will control every aspect. And he imposed, if you will, a dictatorship, a new religious dictatorship. Coupled with that, elements who facilitated the stabilization of the regime created an entity outside of the traditional professional army in the name of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. And the whole purpose of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards was to counter the military as an instrument to keep the regime safe from any potential coup against it by the regular army. It was initially designed to protect the regime from any potential threat coming from the regular army. And as you may remember, the war between Iran and Iraq broke out fairly soon after the revolution. And in fact, the role of the IRGC at the time was to keep in check the military at the borders as they were engaged in war against the invading Iraqi forces, creating a buffer, if you will. And the whole strategy of the regime from the very beginning, and in fact, let's not forget that in 1982, when Iran had reclaimed most of the territories that were invaded by the Iraqi army, Saddam Hussein, and in fact, as a matter of a United Nations resolution, was willing to repay Iran for the war damages caused as a result of his aggression. Khomeini rejected that. He said, we have to keep on fighting and we will ultimately conquer Jerusalem via Karbala. His whole idea, again, was the ideology of continuing the conflict well beyond what it was intended, because he knew that peace would be much more costly to him. So the regime, in a way, bought time. In the meantime, the IRGC became more and more involved in getting more control of the Iranian economy. It became, in fact, a ruling mafia. The IRGC has been the instrument to keep the regime in power by using maximum repression against our own citizens at home while carrying a policy of aggression abroad via its proxies like Hezbollah or Hamas, and beyond even the Middle East all the way to Latin America. The reason I'm saying this is because if you ask me why this regime has been able to stay in power, it's been mostly as a result of sheer intimidation and terror and the suppression of its own citizenry. It had the means and the might to do it. However, in the course of 40 years, the regime's claim to whatever it is that it was doing became more and more atrophied to a point that is now completely delegitimized in the eye of the Iranian people. It's still holding on to power because of the fact that it still maintains an instrument of repression, but people are still revolting against it. There's an outside element that is needed that can equal the playing field for the Iranian people. And that's the discourse I have with the international community, particularly the free world. Or why is it that you expect a change of situation in Iran if you're still conducting a policy of appeasement vis-a-vis this regime, rather than helping the Iranian people overcome this regime by giving them more direct support? Today, the Iranian currency is at its lowest devaluation ever. The most basic needs of society are not being provided. Businesses and schools have to be shut down. But the Iranian people are fighting. They are still resisting. They are still moving. By the time we reach about 5% of society totally mobilized, I think that's where you will see the shift completely occur. But there has to also be an element of external support to invigorate the people, to give them more means on a more equal field of be able to bring about change from within Iran against this regime.
Now it's time for my take on what got X fired up this week. And look, I promise, I'm not a one-trick pony, but the Democrats just keep providing the best material it is impossible not to use. So I want you to play along with me here. Humour me if you would. I'm going to attempt to take you back in time, say 2 years or so. Allow your mind to join me there and really consider what your response would have been to the following statements. Hypotheticals, of course. Imagine, in 2 years from now, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, will be volunteering his time to essentially, and this isn't an exaggeration, save the American economy. He won't make a cent himself, no salary. In fact, he will lose significant personal wealth. But what he will do is help recover taxpayers billions of dollars in waste and fraud. For this alleged sin, the Democratic Party, alongside lefty lunatics, will unite and attempt to destroy him. Not just his reputation or infinite achievements, but his electric car company. Throw in the odd death threat or two as well. These same climate crusaders who chained themselves to trees and wore driving a Tesla as a virtue signalling badge of honour are now trying to blow the whole thing up. No doubt most of you would have said, yeah, you're dreaming, no chance. Imagine if I then told you that not just satisfied with that pitiful plight, the Democrats and lunatic lefties would also find common ground, and yes, I know they're a fairly intertwined bunch, in rallying around Mahmoud Khalil, the terrorist-loving, American-hating leader of violent Columbia University encampments. If the best the Democrats can do in their current dire state, in an attempt to win back the support of the American people, is champion terror supporters, fight for men and women's sports, begrudge children with brain cancer, and try to cancel environmentally friendly electric cars, then settle in Republicans. You'll be in for the long haul. Thank God. That's it for 69X Minutes. No spin, no censorship, just the truth. Make sure you contact us with all of your stories. We'll see you next week.